afternoon, depending on what your time zone is. Good morning, everybody. Uneducated Economist here. So, in this video, would like to discuss a little bit more about the idea on how the Federal Reserve and the Treasury have already bailed out for the next recession, have already basically got the corporations and the idea of unemployment and how to deal with it already prepared for the next recession. In fact, it's already occurring right now as far as the front loading from the Federal Reserve and the Treasury that has taken place. Now, I know that's kind of confusing on everything I said, but I'm going to explain it all back from 2020 and what took place during the unusual and exigent circumstances of the pandemic, and how that unusual and exigent circumstance had produced or created or introduced the situation, there we go, that the Federal Reserve and the Treasury could use to then create the special purpose vehicles and then bail out things. Hey, Lumberjack Landlord, thanks for joining in. Thank you so much for those shout outs, man. That was so cool of you. Very nice. I really appreciate it, man. And Lumberjack's Landlord live stream just a little bit ago, he was saying some pretty nice things about the channel. I really appreciate that, man. Thank you. And if you haven't joined or gone to Lumberjack Landlord's channel, you ought to really check it out. He is such a great dude when it comes to just the general nature of the channel, how to really, take on some of his experience as far as what it's like to be a landlord, getting into the real estate game, being successful at that game, and sharing with others how to do that same thing. I mean, you really couldn't ask for a better channel to follow. So thank you again, Lumberjack Landlord, for those shout outs, man. So one of the things that I really wanted to bring up was the bailing out of these corporations. Like, this is something that I really don't think a lot of people have really wrapped their heads around, even though it's something that I've talked about like for the last 3 years. And that is during the pandemic, right? So let's kind of really think about this. During the pandemic, there was the unusual and exigent circumstances, and that gave the Federal Reserve and the Treasury the ability to set up these special purpose vehicles, which are entities separated from the Federal Reserve. With these special purpose vehicles, they were able to fund these things with hundreds of billions of dollars, right? Now, with this funding of hundreds of billions of dollars, they put out the idea that they were going to be buying up the fallen angels, right? This was the corporations that really are suffering through bad times that really shouldn't exist because of these unusual and exigent circumstances. So this was the idea behind this special purpose vehicle called the Corporate Debt Lending Facility, right? So now when the news got out there that this corporate debt lending facility was going to be buying corporate debt, and then the Federal Reserve did actually buy some ETFs that held some corporate debt to it, which, I mean, it was a lot too. It was, I forget exactly what the number was, quite a few $1 billion. I'm going to say a number like $60 billion. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was a significant number, and it was enough to go out there to the news to establish that credible threat. But they had the ability to buy like $600 billion worth. I mean, it was some ungodly amount that they were funded with. But that's all they did was buy that little bit in the initial beginnings of the pandemic when they first set up this corporate debt lending facility. And then all of a sudden, everybody started rushing in to corporate debt, thinking that they were going to be front running the Fed. But that's not the only thing that was taking place at the time, because really, when you think about it, the Federal Reserve was engaging in quantitative easing and all kinds of stuff, and this was lowering interest rates to zero. Now, there are fixed income investors out there who do want to hold like bonds, like for the interest rate that they pay, the yield that they pay. But as yields were falling and the safe asset of a US Treasury was really not paying anything, and the only reason why people were even holding them is because they figured that they would be able to sell them off into the future for a higher price, that left the people who were looking for that fixed income, they were like, now what do we do? Where do we go? And now they had to start reaching out ever higher up there on the risk scale to try and get into the yield that would be adequate for what their needs were, right? So this is where they started moving into corporate debt and started buying into junk bonds. And so the junk bonds became very desirable in a sense that they just had the yield for these fixed income investors. And this is how a lot of these zombie corporations were able to get funding during the pandemic. Like they didn't directly get it from like the government or anything like that. They literally got it from the market as they were searching for yield anywhere, as the demand for interest rates were simply disappearing, as the yields on everything that was safe was going closer and closer to zero, and in some cases even went negative. So that's really how like a lot of these corporations were able to get their funding. And now in another sense of this, like these bailouts had done something to employment that a lot of people, like, I don't know if they necessarily are thinking are still in condition today, like are we're still feeling those effects from those conditions of what they did with employment back then. Because you think about it, not only did they have like the PPP thing going on where they were paying employees to stay home, or having to hire them back, and all this other things that were going on, people getting enhanced unemployment checks, all that. These corporations, when they get this funding, they need to do something with this cash. And if you're a zombie corporation and you're trying to expand operations, one of the things you end up doing is hiring a lot of people, right? So this is where a lot of people ended up leaving like the service industry and moving up into corporate, especially if you're like working from home kind of thing. So a lot of employment went up into the zombie corporations or into the corporate level of things, as a lot of people have retired. And then also, the simple fact that they had all this access to funding. So now here we're sitting in a situation, right, where the funding is becoming very tight and very limited. And these zombie corporations, or an entity out there that needs ever increasing amounts of financing, or just to be able to roll their financing over, going from, one interest rate to a higher interest rate, means that they can't roll over as much. And they either have to come up with more funding or pay the higher interest rate or just take out less debt. And if that's the case, they may not be a corporation that can ever exist, right? The way they exist is by ever increasing amounts of debt consumption, not by, cutting back on, their efforts and trying getting back to being a more productive, being more of a productive corporation. They never were a productive corporation to begin with. The only reason why they exist is because they could take out debt. Okay, man, I'm really talking fast. This coffee is really, really good today, guys. Okay. All right, last thing I want to say before I start reading comments is this: I have pulled out of the Wall Street Journal today, because this is really leading to that idea, in that a lot of these corporations for the next couple of years already sit on enough cash to basically carry them through. They don't need to roll their debt over. Only the zombies do. And so the Federal Reserve is on the zombie hunt, essentially, by keeping interest rates elevated. Hopefully the corporations that are viable will get through this, but the zombie corporations who need to roll their debt over into new debt won't make it, and they'll get their heads cut off, and then they'll close down, and we'll wipe out a bunch of these, you know, entities that are basically taking resources away from what could be a more viable corporation. Anyway, this is what it has to say. Oops, where are my glasses? Okay. One factor helping businesses right now, and this, again, sorry, this is pulled from the Wall Street Journal. It's a direct quote. Okay. One factor helping businesses right now is that many were able to issue long-term bonds at extremely low rates in the early years of the COVID-19 pandemic. Thanks to what some have called the Great Refinancing of 2020 and 2021, companies in aggregate don't face substantial speculative grade bond maturities until 2025. Many can therefore afford to wait to issue bonds in hope that the rates will drop from current levels. So that's where I was kind of getting at, is that this whole thing, as far as like when people like give meaning to the issues that are happening right now, if you want to look at the Federal Reserve as some kind of entity that is going to create harm and damage and pain and destruction and all the other stuff that can occur in your life, then that's what it's going to do for you, right? I mean, that's exactly what the life is going to be like when you put that sort of energy into it. Now, when I look at the Federal Reserve, I look at it as monetary policy that I am going to try and understand the strategy of, so that I can best conduct my life in a way that is best suited to me. right? And that's really what all this information is the meaning that you give it. Now, if you give it a meaning that it's going to hurt you, then guess what? That's what's going to happen. But if you give it the meaning that you can use this information to better your life, then that's probably what's going to end up coming from it. So again, like when I look at the Federal Reserve, I don't look at like even this hoodie that I'm wearing right now. It says "End the Fed," right? Now, what is it that you would expect the ending of the Fed to look like? Like, are you prepared for that? Like, that's one of the other questions that I kind of put out there is that are you prepared for an ending of the Fed? Is the Fed strategy really that manipulative to the point that it's there to cause you personally pain? Or is it something that you're maybe just misunderstanding? Because guess what? There is a lot of rich people out there who are operating in this exact economy right now, going from rags to riches. Why aren't you one of them? Right? That's really the question that I have to ask. And, knowing what I do about the Federal Reserve, I'm not making it something that is an evil organization. To me, they are a neutral that I have to understand in order to better myself. So, anyway, let's move on. I just saw a super chat there. Oh, where are my glasses? Hold on. Okay. I'm paying off credit cards so banks can loan more fiat. Um, well, actually, if you pay off your credit card, then the banks have less money to loan out. You ever think about that? When you create an instrument of debt, such as a credit card loan, like you swipe your credit card, you are creating an instrument of debt that now the bank gets to sell off, right? So when you pay off your debt, you're actually depleting the bank of its capabilities. Good for you, man. Not more to lend out. I mean, unless you want to lend out to somebody else and gain your own interest rate off of it. All right. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, you bet. Let's go back up here to the beginning. All right. Okay. You gave me a reason to take a nap later. Bring on the next recession. I want to buy stocks for 10 cents on the dollar. All right. A rate hike. Hey, the rate hikes, sorry, of late are just brake pumps to save face. We might have a brief plunge, but it won't last. Okay, I'll go subscribe. Thank you so much. Thank you to everybody who has ever subscribed to the channel. I can't believe that I am at 126,000 subscribers. I just crossed that like yesterday or the day before. And on the 4th of July, it was like a few days before the 4th of July, a day or two, that I had actually crossed 100,000 subscribers. So to think like we're coming up on that day and that the channel has grown by like 26% over the last year. That's kind of like an easy way of looking at it. It just astonishes me. Like I never thought that I would ever have 26 subscribers, let alone 26,000 or 126,000. But here we are, and it's just amazing that we're still growing. And I mean, I'm looking forward to what the next thing has to offer. Did I get another super chat there? Where's that? I want to try and hit the super chats. I'm sorry. I think I missed a couple last time we did a live stream, and I'm going to try and not do that today. Thank you, Simon, for sharing and pushing forward. Yeah, well, again, these are, the theory, the story you tell yourself is the story that is the truth, right? I mean, that is no matter how you end up looking at it. And again, if this is a story of how the Fed is like going to wreak havoc on your life, then it's going to do that. That's exactly what's going to end up happening to you. But if you take on the theory that the Fed is not necessarily your enemy, but just a entity that is out there that can do things that are very damaging, and so it's up to you to understand what they are doing and how they operate. Like, if you live in fear, then you end up it wow, I don't know how we're supposed to be talking about the bailout. Okay. If you live in fear, you're living in a lower vibration, right? And when you live on a lower vibration, this is like fear. This is like, being like unaware of the circumstances that lay ahead. And again, that kind of goes with fear. It's like, there's jealousy issues that are down there, envy issues, these all the stuff that has like a very low vibration to it, right? And then you have a hard time like navigating through life and finding opportunity because you put up these barriers and stuff like that deal with all these fear and anxiety issues that you have, right? So part of that is even understanding the information that's coming from the Fed, right? So if you take it in as a negative information, right? Because that's the meaning that you have given it, then that's exactly what it's going to do for you, is create a negative outcome, right? And so when you're set on these expectations of having like a wonderful life ahead, but yet you're taking in this negative information coming from the Federal Reserve that totally affects your life, well, that's going to affect the outcome that comes from it as well. So try and take the information in as a neutral, right? It doesn't mean, it's not a good or a bad thing. It's all the meaning that I give it, right? And then when I take this information in, hopefully I will come up with just intuitively come up with the correct decisions as far as what it is that I need to do with going forward with my life. All right. So let's get back to how the Fed bailed out the corporations. Okay. I subscribe for the lumber updates. Yeah. And that is another thing. Right now, we are starting to see the increase since I read the lumber update. Right now, we are starting to see how the builders' sentiment is starting to increase. Like it was already turning positive on a couple of it, on the three indicators. What is it? Buyers like, I don't know. It's like sales conditions, something, but buyer's traffic was the issue. Was like the buyer traffic was the one that was like incredibly in the negative. Like anything above on the index, it's anything above 50 is positive, anything below 50 is negative. And this buyer's traffic for the builder sentiment was what was in the toilet. It was like at 35 or something, and it's still really low right now, but it's increasing. The rest of the builder sentiment index is turning positive and becoming more positive. Um, and that's where like the issue with lumber is just now starting to find it where I believe is what I was expecting, right? Where once the home builder sentiment becomes like fully positive, like it's obvious that it's taken place, you're going to find that the demand for lumber is not going to have a supply that's going to meet that capability. How dramatic that is, I don't know. Right now, we are sitting in a position in which, for the last year, we have been talking about mill curtailments. I mean, almost last year. I wouldn't say it's last year. Last, what, 6, 8 months or something like that, right? But there's been a lot of mill curtailments that have taken place, and it's obvious at times that there is limitations on things that are ordered for, like, because I work at a lumber yard. Like you find that you go to order a particular unit and it's not readily available. You have to wait a week or something for it, right? And that's not something that was very typical. You normally order stuff and you get it right away. So when you have that kind of issues taking place, but there's not a lot of demand at the time, then if the demand picks up, then you're going to have more of those issues coming up, and that's what I anticipate. Right? Because still, I haven't seen where the production, like, I also, okay, so a more anecdotal evidence. All right, so I know people who work in the logging industry, like literally cut down trees and haul them to the mill. And that industry has slowed down dramatically. Like over the last 6 months, it's been quite prevalent, right? So as far as the slowdown has happened, that is input going into the mill. Now the mill themselves, right? Because everybody's going to talk, whoa, wildfires, right? That's very much an issue, and that's going to later impact. And that's what the same thing with the slowdown in the logging that has taken place. See, a lot of people are just going to blame the wildfires, but there's been a slowdown in logging as well, like the actual operations of cutting trees out of the forest and hauling them out of there. So even though these wildfires are a dramatic effect, and you get the smoke in your face and you get all the, the news coverage of it all, and it does have a very big impact on the market, but that's later down the road, right? So right now the mills are sitting on a load of, well, not at this time because of the slowdown that has been taking place, but typically I would say that the mills are sitting on a log supply. Like they have a yard full of logs, so they have this continuous supply that comes into the mill. That supply has been depleting or been coming down over the last 6 months or whatever. So yes, there is a slowdown in the amount of logs that are sitting at the mills now, and there's going to be a slowdown of logs coming in due to the wildfires and the slowdown of logging, which has already been taking place, right? So when the demand does pick up, and then the demand for logs starts to pick up, right, this is going to be another issue, right? So this is where like people are going to be like, screaming for, higher, or what am I trying to say? More lumber at the same time that the demand for logs is going to be in a shorter supply at the mills due to the depletion that is taking place right now. When the fires are done, they will go into salvage mode and they will cut down an insane amount of trees to try and save as many of these trees as they can, because they're just going to end up rotting anyway. And that ends up being like so this is like all the confusing things that go into lumber, right? So this ends up being like another part of the industry. So yes, we have the slowdown taking place right now because of the fires and the slowdown in logging anyway. But once this is all done and the demand picks up, it's going to be quite intense, the amount of logs that end up going into the mills. And how much demand coming from overseas at this exact same time is also going to be, one of the questions that happens, because a lot of people don't realize that the forestry industry here in the United States and up in Canada is a major export going over to the Asian nations, right? So, anyway, I think I'm done with talking about lumber. I think that was all of it. Glasses. Okay, moving downward. Let's see here. Doesn't change the nature of power structure. Okay, America produces weapons and mass destruction, but Israel controls the humanity destiny. All right, Fed isn't neutral. Power structure isn't either. The big man runs the show, and not talking about God. China and Russia aren't good either. Power corrupts. One's outlook or vibe doesn't change that. Yes, it does. Yes, I totally disagree, bro. I mean, I totally disagree on what it is that you can use that information for inside of your own life. You're looking at it in a way that is going to totally destroy and make you into a position in which that you are suffering, right? I don't do that, right? I use that exact same information to be regurgitated out here onto YouTube, and I get paid for it, and that's the way I look at it, right? I mean, this is, to me, that's the information that comes from it. Now, how it is that I'm supposed to best deal with the information. Now, I could look at it as a terrible thing that they do, and that could be a very well be the case, like, and that's the meaning that you can give it. I totally understand that. And now, yes, you can change the meaning that you give it, because now the meaning for me is that I get to come out here and talk about it and try and figure out where it is that I need to conduct myself to best take advantage of this situation, because there's always an advantage to every situation no matter what you're in. Right? I mean, so look at it how you like, man. I mean, you can disagree with me, and I totally understand why you would. All right, moving on. Okay, let's see here. We all know Zuck has been doing prison workouts for like 20 years. Streaming from a truck. No, the truck is there. I'm sitting in the Toyota. All right. Did you have thoughts on any of the questions I asked you yesterday about deflationary pressures? I'm not sure. I read a lot of stuff yesterday, and I'm not sure which one it was that you're referring to as far as the pressures go. Let me think. What was? Oh, Brody, right? No, I did think about that. I remember that question, but I'm trying to remember. I wish I could go and read it right now so I could like really answer it thoughtfully. All right. I try to supplement your channel with others to get an idea what is happening in the economy overall. Bravo is always on, then your read is different. Well, this is the thing. I don't have. Hold on, I need to roll this window down because it's getting kind of hot in here. Uh-oh. Looks like the battery's going bad or the motor's going bad. Okay. Here's the thing. When it comes to understanding this information, right? It's just like anything else in life. How it is, and just like we've been talking about, how it is that you take it in from your understanding is how the meaning that you are going to give that information, and how it is that it's going to conduct your life and the things that will come into you from it. If you feel that inside of you, like you have the energy built within you that says, the information that I am receiving is telling me why I am poor, then guess what? You will stay poor, right? But if you take in the information and say, this is the information that I need in order to make me rich, then the information you take in will make you rich, right? Because it's all about how it is that you take it in. And I know like a lot of people are like, man, that's kind of a horseshit statement to make, but it's not, right? Because it's literally what it is that you feel that your life is deserving of is what you are going to get from it, right? It's the energy that you are projecting out there is the exactly what you're going to get a reflection of, you know. And I mean, I know this because of the days, like I knew about this stuff before I even started to like even try and research it and try and have like whatever a spiritual awakening really is, you know. Before I even figured all, like, there was this energy out there, like I could feel it, like I knew it was happening and I didn't understand it, I couldn't explain it, how it is that, you know, if you put your mind to something, you give it a positive thought to it, you keep your, you know, attention, you know, focused to the possibilities of it, then you find like amazing things will start coming to you, right? And so I didn't realize why that occurred, right? And it's the same thing no matter what it is that you're dealing with, even if it's the information that you are bringing in, right? So if you are bringing in information that is contradictory, right, but it's not something that you're trying to argue against, but just something that you are taking in as information. So you watch this channel and you watch that channel, and they're two absolute, totally different things, right? But the information that I get from it tells me that the things that I see and the things that are occurring, you know, as far as like what I'm supposed to do with my life, then tell me that, you know, these two possible outcomes could very well occur, right? Whether or not they were predictions or just the way things are going. Now, you intuitively, hopefully, somewhere back in the subconscious, will just be making the right decisions with the positive energy that you have going that will draw the positive like opportunities to you. You won't be like tunnel visioned into like it needs to be this particular way, and if it's outside of this, the Fed is going to destroy my life, right? That's like an ego thing that's taken place inside of that. You got to kind of remove that thing and say, okay, you know, it's all possibilities can come from there, and all of it is a neutral aspect of it, and it's just more of how I'm going to take the meaning of it and how it is that I'm going to relate this information to making the best decisions for going forward in my life. And again, like, I mean, yeah, I mean, they'll come down with some hard things that are supposed to, like, you know, absolutely destroy your well-being. Okay, you know, if you lived your entire life as somebody who did nothing but go fishing and garden, and that's only thing you did. You didn't listen to anybody, you didn't talk to anybody, you didn't do anything about it, man. Your meaning to life was fishing and gardening, right? It wasn't Federal Reserve is going to destroy my world. Right? That's literally what it comes down to. Is the meaning of life is what you mean it to be, you know? And if you live in it in a depressive fashion and think about it in a depressive fashion, then depressive things will occur, you know? I don't believe in positive thinking in my own life. I just don't think you can put the power structure in a different light, change what they are just by positive thinking. It's not, you're right. It's not just a matter of positive thinking, right? I mean, you know, it is, positive thinking is just part of it, right? The reality in which that you are experiencing literally is what you perceive it to be. Like, I mean, it's hard to get into it because I'm not like some kind of crystal gripping hippie dude who, like, you know, believes in like the, you know, this weird stuff. But when you really start to understand it, when you really start to understand that we are all literally just energies, like this conscious being of energy, right? And that you can exude this energy. You know you can do it. You have done it. Like, you can walk into a room and either make the room feel intimidated by by the way you're presenting yourself, that you can make yourself feel welcoming. You can, and then the people on the other side of this, inside of the room, will either relate or not to that energy. Like, you know, either they'll be like, oh, hey man, he's putting off this like friendly engaging energy, come and approach it, or this intimidating, don't mess with me, I don't want to be talked talk to, right? And you don't have to say anything. It's just literally by the way you feel about it at the moment that you're in it, right? And now that goes out to everything in the entire world, right? That one thing. And so if you are constantly feeling it with, I am living a life that is being held against, I'm being held down because of these external things, right? What you are doing is you are giving meaning to these external things, and that meaning is that they are holding me down. And that's exactly the life that you will live from it. Everything in your life will be conducted in that fashion. And so you will be held down because of it. And I know that people will argue with this, right? And that's cool because I used, for much of my life, up until I was 40 years old, that's exactly how I thought, right? I thought, some people are just broke ass losers, and I happen to be one of them, right? I'm a drunk, broke ass loser. That's what I was. That's what I called myself. That's the life that I lived. That was the meaning of my life, right? Was to be that condition. And then one day I said, that's not my life. And I gave up drinking. And I didn't know what the next step would be, but I knew that giving up drinking was the first step. And now the meaning of my life was not getting drunk. And I didn't know what the meaning of my life should have been, but it wasn't getting drunk anymore because that's what was the meaning of my life. So this is how you change it, right? Now I look at things that come into my life as not something, I had to change the meaning of everything, right? Not the reasons why I need to get drunk, but now the reasons why it is that I need to progress and do the other things that I need to do with my world. And why are we talking about this? Why aren't we talking about bailout, man? All right. I agree with Simon to an extent. I just don't believe in hippy dippy. They're neutral. It's all in how you look at it. Nah, that's a new AG BS. Okay. How in the world did I get to where I'm at? Okay. That's the only question that I asked because, at one point, you can go back and watch my videos when I was talking about it, it felt like something else had a hold of me and was then pushing me, right? I didn't know what in the world was happening. The only thing I knew is that I was not going to limit myself on any opportunity that was happening out there. Anytime anybody said, can I get an interview? I would say yes. George Gatton asked me to go down and speak. I said yes. Anytime that I felt like I didn't want to put out a video, I said, no, you're a YouTuber who puts out videos every day. Go out and put a video out. All these things that felt incredibly uncomfortable, I said, if it makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm going to go out and do it. It was facing my fears because being in fear is a low vibration. But when you face your fear, when you're, moving into unknown, when you're going into like questionable situations, but you're going in with, with an idea of, excitement and like experience for the first time, when you're going into this, you're going into it with an energy that is going to be positive, that people are going to reflect with, right? They're going to resonate with it. And that's where the channel really started to pick up. People were like sharing in this experience with me, and they were like, going along for the ride and experiencing it and watching it happen with me. And a lot of people started changing their own lives because of it. I mean, I know that what it takes to quit drinking. And I know there is nobody out there in the world that will ever get you to quit drinking. Only you can do it. But sometimes you're inspired, right? And sometimes it's just hearing somebody else's stories. That's why when people ask me what's the best way to quit drinking, it's to go to the rooms, man. It's to go to AA meetings and listen to other people's stories. Because once you can relate to somebody else's story, it changes your perception of everything, right? All of a sudden, the meaning of your life is something much different because you've seen somebody else do it, right? So I have to disagree with anybody who says, no, this isn't possible. This energy feeling, expanding your consciousness, becoming, having a spiritual awakening or whatever is like some kind of like hokey thing. It's not. I mean, I experienced it. You experienced me doing it right here on this YouTube channel since 2017, right? I mean, I can't deny it. Like it's occurred, and then it can continue to occur if you just kind of understand how these things operate. Like, I mean, I'm not really one, I speak out of my wheelhouse when I talk about this stuff because it's really still confusing and I'm still trying to understand it for the first time myself here, but it's all a matter of like understanding like the energy levels that you put within yourself, right? And then if you have this understanding of yourself that limits you, like, I'm not smart enough to do this job. I'm not good enough to, hang out with women. I'm not, adequate enough to, I don't know, to do whatever it is that you want to do with your life. When you put these beliefs in you, you have to understand, it's like, where did this come from? Like, how is it that you are not just like anybody else out there and be able to perform at the most amazing levels possible? How is that not in you? Right? How is it that this person over there is able to perform that, but you can't? It's not. There's no magic secret to it all. It's just that the existence, and I mean, obviously, there's some knowledge that they had to gain while they were, you know, give them to a level of skills or something like that. But the fact that somebody else can do it is the reason why you can do it too, right? And I mean, to think that you can't is like, that's not even feasible. And so it's really just a matter of how you see it. And now, what is that limitation? Why am I limited in this fashion? Why am I not, like, maybe you're in school and you had teachers that told you you're dumb or something like that. Like, I know when I was going in school, I had a hell of a time reading. Like, I had a major reading disability. And when you're going around from class to class and you're listening to adults talk about, like, well, we don't understand why he's not keeping up and he's not learning like at the same pace as all the rest of them, it kind of makes you feel dumb. Right. And then you kind of think, well, shit, I'm dumb, whatever, and so you're thinking, I don't really ever anticipate on doing anything other than just kind of screwing off and maybe scratching, skirting by or whatever. Like, I didn't ever try to get good grades because I never really thought that I could get good grades because everybody was wondering why it was that I wasn't getting good grades. So I kind of gave myself this meaning that I wasn't smart, right? Only to find out later that here I can talk mad economics on a scale that is so to the level that I can get 126,000 subscribers because I stopped giving myself that meaning, right? I started giving myself a different meaning. And even though it was tough, like coming out here on YouTube and saying, putting out like, economic theories and knowing that people were going to like, say some pretty nasty things about it. It was just like, I grew up having some pretty nasty things said about me. I don't care any about that anymore. That's not my life. That doesn't give meaning to my life anymore, right? The meaning of what I do is doing exactly this, is to come out here and have a conversation with you guys. Why am I babbling so much today? My goodness. All right, let's move on. All right, I think you are on to something. My wife has the same attitude. She is more blessed than her other peers and with less work. Well, it is, right? It's all a matter, like, even I myself, I know, like, okay, we talked about fear. I have my own fear complex. Okay, my own fear issues coming. Okay. So I know that if I really tried, I could push my YouTube channel and I could probably break free from having a 9 to 5 job, right? My wife right now is not working, so she could be home with the kids for the summer, for the boys. And I think that is the most amazing thing that I could ever possibly have in my life right now, is to be able to do something like this, right? This is like, to me, the meaning behind what I have going on right now is absolutely like, I couldn't ask for anything better, right? To have it in this kind of situation, to be able to do the things that I do. And so even having a 9 to 5 job feels like, to me, it feels like it gives meaning to my life. Like, I enjoy, and I know a lot of people will say, how could you possibly do that? But I enjoy going to work. Like, I enjoy the people I interact with in the job that I do, and being, doing the sales thing. Like, it feels good to me. Now, there is times when I realized that it was just like, man, you don't have to be doing this, and your life could be so much different. Like, you could be doing things on a much higher level. But is that really the meaning of my life, right? Is that really what I'm supposed to do? Or is this what I'm supposed to do? Like, live my life like I really enjoy it, the working class thing, being like, feeling like an average guy, because I do, but then being able to have the benefit of having like this YouTube channel and all the, all the wonderful things that come from that, right? It's hard work to continue to do all these things. But the reward that I get from it, that means so much to me, right? Everything is so meaningful in everything that you put into it, right? I could hate my job and feel that it's a burden on me, or I can not feel that way about it. And I can feel like, it's a benefit and I gain, insight and knowledge and, experience and interaction and all the other stuff that comes from it. It's all about meaning. Right? All right, Simon, your views on adapting to the environment that's in place really resonates positively with me. I appreciate you for that. The Fed's decisions are happening, but my actions are happening to me. That's right. And you're not the Fed is not responsible for you, right? That is just the thing. The Fed is not responsible for you. You are responsible for how you end up dealing with what the Fed ends up doing, right? I mean, this life isn't fair. Straight up. Right? It's never going to be. And so when somebody says, "Well, that's not fair," you're right. No, no. I mean, things are not fair. It's not. It's like I don't know where in the world everything was supposed to be fair, right? I mean, it would be nice. I mean, that's a nice thought, that things would be fair, but it's not, and it's not meant to be. And so the moment that you get that out of your head that things aren't fair, then the better off we'll all be. All right. And so when the Fed makes a decision, when something happens and it messes with what we've had for an expectation, we have to understand why it is that we had this expectation and why it is that we put so much, belief into this expectation from somebody else. Like, I understand that the dollar can fail. I can understand that Bitcoin can fail. I understand that, gold would be absolutely worthless when you're starving. Right? I mean, I know these things. Like, I am not counting on any one of these things absolutely saving my life, and that's like the whole point of it all, is that my expectations of any one of these things is very low. I mean, I don't have expectations of those things. I think it's cool to have them. I think it's nice to diversify into it. I don't really, anticipate any one of them making me any kind of millionaire, billionaire, or any kind of thing like that. That's not, my anticipation from it. For me, it's, for one, like, I got into Bitcoin just simply out of curiosity for it, and then it's been so like dramatic on some of its moves that I like wonder, why aren't you more into this thing? Like, why aren't you taking advantage of it just to, because it's there, right? It's glowing global. I mean, it's obviously that it's getting bigger and not smaller. Why are you not like participating in it? So I participate in gold, I participate in Bitcoin, I participate in purchasing of US treasuries and, having a bank account and all the other stuff. Like, there's no place out there that I'm not scared of any of that stuff. I get another super chat there. All right. Hey, John, thank you very much for the $4.99. Big difference between smart people and those that can memorize things better. You are definitely smarter than most people in office currently. Well, again, I appreciate that, John. Thank you very much for the $4.99 and for the kind words. It's, again, like, when you grow up with an understanding and a knowledge of the way things operate and the way things are, then you have these expectations of the way it goes. Your subconscious is just going to believe it that way. I never got that. Like, I never was taught economics. I wasn't taught that, the things that I'm reading and understanding for myself are incorrect. And, there is no incorrect when it comes to the economic theory. There's millions of types of theories out there and the cause and effects from it. And a lot of people like to, use political theories. A lot of people like to use use environmental, issues or social issues or whatever. Like, the things that I've picked up from reading Cantillon's theory, from reading, Federal Reserve speeches, from attempting to read, The Wealth of Nations, from all kinds of places, and then like listening to lots of different people, but never listening to, well, I shouldn't say that. I don't do it now. There was a time when I directed my my listening in a particular direction. Like I would listen to Peter Schiff pretty regularly. I would like seek out Doug Casey stuff. I was listening to this particular information on a regular basis. And then I found what ended up happening is that if I did it long enough, I would end up sounding very much like those people. And that's part of what, clued me into the whole, like, again, like the spiritual awakening and like understanding your energy and thoughts, right? Because if you are putting this thought into your energy field, right, where you are just constantly thinking about, you know, like just relating to things like Peter Schiff, then you're going to end up feeling and understanding the economy just like Peter Schiff does, and you're going to believe those things. And not saying that they're wrong. I mean, I'm not saying that at all. I mean, he could be 100% right on that. However, what I'm doing is not necessarily taking on the energy of Peter Schiff, but I'm taking on as much little pieces of information from as many different directions as I can get to try and fill my energy field with the appropriate decisions that I need to make the best advantage that I can for me and my family. That's what I'm attempting to do. And then I share that with you guys. All right. Do you follow any other YouTuber? Would you consider making an audio available on Spotify and others? Actually, I do have it's called You Guys Let Me Know, and I got to talk to my assistant. She just recently moved uh, from here from the West Coast out to the East Coast, and trying to get things settled and doing all kinds of stuff. Like we haven't really been in much contact. We're starting to engage in more communication and getting things up and running for the channel, because I really want to take the channel to another level. But when I do that, I really want to be like consistent about it, right? I'm pretty consistent about just putting out videos every day, but trying to be consistent on multiple platforms, or trying to be consistent on, say, doing other parts to providing content on the internet, it starts taking up a lot more time, and then I can't be consistent. If you're not consistent, then you're not going to do well with algorithms and stuff like that. So, trying to be consistent with it is really where that I'd like to expand the channel. But yes, like I do I do have podcast that we air, which is basically just the videos that I do, just done again on podcasts that you can listen to. Oops. All right. Back to, do I follow other YouTubers? Not particularly. Like I don't follow any single individual YouTuber, um, unless and I do follow Aaron Doughty though. He puts out a video about once a week talking about the spiritual awakening, expanding your consciousness, and I've talked about him before. I really like his videos. So I mean, I guess if there was a YouTuber out there that I follow, he puts out one once a week, so I do catch that one. And then other than that, I do watch videos when they pop up. Like there's a Brent Johnson on Kitco the other day that I haven't watched yet, but I do intend on watching that one. And there's a few other ones out there that I do catch occasionally, but for the most part, I don't really follow any particular YouTuber or anything like that. And I'm not saying that because they're not good information. Again, I'm doing that because I really want to have my own thoughts, my own theories, my own understanding of the economy that I can share with you. And I mean, so far that's working out well for me. Now I do miss it. Like I do miss listening to a lot of these other YouTubers out there talking about the economy, just simply because I really enjoyed their perspective. I enjoyed their opinions. I enjoyed the counter argument that that would go against my theories and stuff like that, because it really has, gives me questioning whether or not that, my theories are strong or whatever, or maybe just, misguided. That can happen, right? But I feel that a lot of the stuff that I'm, as far as my theories, my understanding of the economy, I have a lot that I can go back and reference to. A lot of Federal Reserve speeches that are now playing out today. And that's really where I think a lot of my theory comes from, is from the monetary policies coming from the Fed. Now, a lot of people like to argue about the way that the Fed should be but I don't see it that way. It's more of like what the Fed is and what they're going to do. That's more of like the way I kind of try and look at it. And really, when you go back and you look at some of these speeches, it just really plays out today. Like, especially, the ones that I keep referring to, the uh, the Ben Bernanke speech from early 2001. Um, what was it, deflation and how to prevent it from ever happening here. That's where the credible threat theory comes in. And now they just openly even talk about it. They said that they don't use forward guidance anymore, and then they talk nothing, but they talk all about signaling, right? What is that? That is forward guidance. Like, it isn't exactly forward guidance, like saying, hey, we are planning on doing a quarter point interest rate hike on the next quarter, definitely. Like, that's not the forward guidance that I'm talking about. Signaling is a credible threat, right? That's the same thing. I mean, it might as well be forward guidance because it has the same impact on the economy, you know. And this is where, like, I think a lot of people also kind of see things differently. Like, they look at the Federal Reserve raising interest rates and then say, like, there's this is going to impact like the housing market, but the housing market really has to relate to mortgage-backed securities in the mortgage market, right? But these two things kind of disconnected from each other. When the Federal Reserve said that they were going to start raising rates, mortgage rates shot up and then kind of plateaued out, where the Federal Reserve's mortgage or Federal Reserve fund rates kept ticking up, right? So it wasn't like they were following in lockstep with each other. The mortgage market was acting differently from the Fed funds. And now people think to themselves, because I've said it too, that there is a lag from the time that the interest rates rise to the time that it impacts the economy. And see, now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because somebody actually had commented this just recently in one of my videos, saying that there's this lag from the time that the Fed raises interest rates to the time that it will impact the housing market. And I totally agree with that, right? And so when we see the mortgage rates rise initially months ago, like, I don't even know how long ago now, that it was at that point that we start having the time of lag, right? It's not now that the Fed is peaking out that we have the lag going. It was the time that the mortgage rates peaked out months and months and months ago. So we feel the impacts of that for sure, of that mortgage whenever they peaked out. I think they had actually peaked out in October before they had come down like a little bit. So that was like the actual peak of it. So, but they had started rising before that. So that's really where, like, the impact into the mortgage market should be taking place right now because it happened so, months ago. That lag is already starting to be here. Anyway, everybody understands the market differently, right? Okay, 40 million Americans have student loan debt. A lot don't plan to pay it at all. What's your thoughts? I don't know. We'll have to see what happens. Not paying student debt should be free mandatory ticket to Hunger Games. I don't know, man. Like, that whole student loan debt thing, it just really trips me out because, right now, like, if you go and you read what's taking place in China, it's like they have like an insane amount of people who are getting degrees right now with absolutely no way of using it. Man, I need to take this hoodie off. It's getting hot here. Is there a place? I need to find some shady spot to do my live stream. All right. I don't have a labeled shirt. No, okay. So, I think about the student loan debt, right? And everybody who had taken it out, it's funny because I know people laugh at me every time I bring up Cantillon, but he talked about this very thing, right? He says that if you send a bunch of people off to go become like, sailors, that can be, do transport, do transportation of, through shipping or whatever. If you train all these people to sail and they all like, you send them off to another country to learn this trade, right? And you bring them all back, you're going to find that there's going to be far too many of them to do that, right? And then if they have children, like, how do you, like, these, obviously today's a little different, But he talked about it back in the day that if they end up training, or teaching their kids the same craft that they have, you can oversupply the skill into a particular area. And I felt that was going to take place back when I saw like right after I graduated high school, it seemed like everybody was moving into student loans and going and getting degrees. And like now when I graduated high school, a bunch of us, we already knew that we weren't going to college. We were going to go right into the, into work and just, do that. But everybody after that, I started finding was going to school, right? And then like the commercials were intense. Like I remember, like I don't watch TV now, so I don't know what's as far as commercials go, but I remember that they had these education connection, and they had like these kids dancing and talking about how awesome it was to get their education connection, get their student loans so that they can go to school and do their thing. And they were dancing around doing like these infomercials for this stuff. And I remember I got up and dancing would like mock it and stuff like that, and and like make fun of it in front of my for like making a show for my wife or something. And she would laugh at it too. And I was just like, what are all these kids doing, man? If everybody goes and gets a degree, then everybody has a degree, then the degrees are worthless. And then now we're starting to find that to be the case, right? So, it's amazing on how many people that I find just work regular average jobs that you don't need a degree for, but yet they have a degree, right? Because everybody went out and got one. So what was like, the real reasoning behind this, right? Behind this push to get everybody to go out and get some student debt, right? Go off and get a degree. And I think about like what happened with that student debt, because a lot of people don't like, they think like the student debt, right? I got this debt that I need to pay, but they don't really think about like who owns that debt, like who do they owe that money to? And a lot of people know it's the government, right? Okay, so that's easy enough. The government can just make it vanish and just go away, right? Because they do all kinds of stuff that just disappears, like missiles and bullets and stuff. Anyway, so why can't they just make like the student loan debt go away? Well, if you understand how the student loan debt operates, like what ends up happening once the student has signed that debt, what ends up going on with that debt? Where does it go? And it ends up getting packaged with other student debt, right? And it's called a student loan asset-backed security. And this is what the government ends up putting on their balance sheet. So when we think about like the student loan asset-backed security sitting on the government's balance sheet as an asset, in order to make that asset disappear, you have to like buy it, use taxpayer money or something, right? Because if it just simply disappears, the asset then now it disappears, but the liability still exists. And so the credit rating of the United States will begin to fall. And people might say, well, how much could it possibly be? It's an insane amount. Like it's a lot. I couldn't tell you exactly the number that it compares to on the assets of the United States government, but the financial portion of that balance sheet, it represents like 50% of that. So out of all this debt or all these assets that the Federal Reserve or the Federal Reserve, the government has, that is the financial portion of it. That means like all the bonds that they hold, maybe from, whatever. The financial portion of it, 50% of that is made up of student loan asset-backed securities. So it's a significant number. They're not just going to be able to just make it disappear. And now, when it does, it's going to have a major impact on the credit rating of the United States. Now, whether or not they care at that time, because like maybe they're not taking out debt and they don't care where their interest rates go or whatever, I don't know if that's going to be the case. Like I can't tell you what's going to happen from that sort of scenario, but that's just the case that happens to be today. And so in order to alleviate that, what's going to end up being, right? Is it going to be like literally taxpayer money buying these student loan asset-backed securities and making them disappear? Or is it going to be like, I don't know, a credit rating default kind of situation? I don't know. Like I can't tell you. But when people ask me like, how do I think that's going to impact the market? I can't tell you how it's going to impact the market. I just can tell you how it looks like from right here and what it would take for something like that to happen. So, people keep saying about this student debt relief. I had people like coming to me all over the place talking about how they were getting this student debt relief. Did it ever happen? I mean, I was wondering, I was questioning it at the time. Did it ever take place? I mean, I know some did. I know they dangle a carrot out there to make sure that they can keep students, in debt and keep them like, activated in the idea that they're going to continue to borrow money so they can get these, get these degrees. But did anybody really like have any kind of like, was there any kind of significant relieving of student loan debt? I mean, anyway. Did I get another super chat up there? I did. Where's that at? All right. Touches. Okay, I just want to make sure I got it here. What is that? Ellis? Gosh, I can hardly read this screen. Do I have something covered up? Thank you very much for the $4.99. The little things are what piss me off. The big things are in God's hands. Yeah, I mean, well, again, there's nothing in your world that should piss you off, right? There's things that I can understand would be quite frustrating, but if things like piss you off, like there's that dude's pissing me off, all right, that's your own fault because it had probably something to do with the fact that you didn't set some boundaries in the early days. Right? In the early time, you were willing to engage in a behavior that was taking place that you were not acceptable of, but because you didn't say anything about it, it continued to push and push and push until you finally got pissed off about it. That's what ends up happening. A lot of times people don't understand what it is or the meanings behind the reasonings to set boundaries and to be, adamant about that. I mean, some people are really good at it. Like, I mean, I have a friend who like right now will set like, will be very, very vocal in things that, she finds acceptable or, within people's behaviors and stuff like that. And she'll be like, hey, that's cool, whatever, I'm out of here, and that, I mean, I find it quite unique on how well she's able to do it. And then she finds that the people in her world really don't mess with her too much. Like obviously there's things that are happening. I mean, there's things that take place, but for the most part, the people that are around her, they treat her quite well, right? They treat her the way that she's, that she's allowing them to basically treat her, and then she doesn't have, a lot of issues that come up. And I always found that unique out of her, and I like that. I like that, that characteristic of her, which isn't her characteristic, it's her personality. I mean, this is just who she is. So again, like, when it comes to being pissed off about a situation, again, it's generally because of, your own thoughts, your own behaviors, and your own actions that have led to that very situation. And it's probably due to the fact that you didn't set something early on. And I'm not trying to accuse you of anything. I'm just saying that's from my own personal experience too. All right. Damn, I can't see shit. There we go. Living in progressive Portland, Oregon, I have found that if God is for you, who can be against you? Narcissists are always pushing boundaries. They want to get an emotional rise out of you, even anger, so they get more info on how to control you. Okay, I mean, that's very true. I mean, I guess there's that. If you are doing anything in a manipulative fashion, that is a negative energy that is going to come back and actually do some serious damage to you. That is not authentic behavior, right? So pushing boundaries with an idea that you are going to get people to behave in a way that is going to benefit you is, yeah, that's a negative energy that's probably going to come back and get you bad. But it's another thing to push your boundaries and say, hey, I am unacceptable of this behavior for whatever reason, and I'm not going to engage in this any further, right? So you can, I mean, pushing boundaries on people and then making them stick around for it is one thing, right? But pushing boundaries on people and saying, hey, if you want me to stick around or you want to stick around, this is the way it's going to be, and it's cool if it's not, right? That's a difference. There's a major difference inside of that. But if you're doing it out of a manipulative fashion, like you want people to behave so you can gain something out of it, and you're pushing boundaries to do that, you're absolutely right. That's horrible. And again, like, I'm not really like I'm not like some kind of expert on this thing. I don't even know how it is that I even talk about this stuff, but I mean, I guess this is just things that I've learned from myself, All right. Do what their parents should have done. Let's see here. Do you believe in magical sky wizard? All right. Let's get back down here. Ultraviolence. Narcissist people have a heart issue, not a brain issue. Uh, Gold represents his kingship. We partied and played until they left, and we had to clean up and pay the bills. Huh. All right. Listen, yacht rock. Okay. Took me 56 years old to pay my debt. It took 56 years to pay my debt. Student loans are the U.S. biggest asset on the books. Is it the single biggest? I thought it was just the biggest portion of the biggest. Anyway, I haven't looked that up in quite some time. You gone down to Pain Town? Nah, joking, just you. I like the movie Misery. Yeah, to prevent their legs from getting broken.